Ever notice how avoidants act differently? Only when you stop chasing them. This moment, they realize you're truly gone. It's terrifyingly honest. The truth is, avoidants don't react when you push, plead, or wait endlessly for them to show up. Their defenses are built to withstand drama, clinginess, and emotional pressure. They rarely bend under constant pursuit because their instinct is to retreat, to protect themselves from feeling too exposed. But the moment you emotionally detach, the moment you stop being the one who's always available, that's when the quiet cracks start to appear. Suddenly, they are faced with a reality they rarely consider. You might actually leave and they can't control that. At first, it's subtle. You might notice a change in their energy, a small hesitation in their usual composure. Avoidants rarely explode in obvious emotion. They aren't dramatic in their realizations. Instead, they pause, they think, they feel a sense of emptiness they aren't used to acknowledging. It's a quiet, internal alarm. The first time their walls are being challenged, not by confrontation, but by absence. This is when they start noticing what you truly brought to their life. The emotional stability, the care, the consistency they quietly relied on, but rarely valued openly. After the pause comes the testing. They begin to reach out, but not in the way you might expect. It isn't declarations of love or apologies, it's small, indirect actions. A text that seems casual, a like on social media, a comment that brushes the surface of connection. These are their experiments, ways of measuring whether your detachment is permanent. Avoidants act through behaviors, not words, because vulnerability is terrifying. Every subtle attempt at contact carries layers of meaning that only someone who knows avoidant patterns can interpret. They are testing quietly to see if the door they once closed is still ajar. What's happening underneath it all is deeper than surface level regret. Avoidants begin to reflect in isolation. They notice the void you leave behind, and they feel emotions they rarely allow themselves to fully experience: loss, longing, and yes, sometimes fear. They think about what they pushed away, the comfort they ignored, the person who stayed through the inconsistencies of their walls. This reflection is personal, internal, and rarely shared aloud. The shock isn't for them, it's for you. When you see the slow unraveling of their carefully maintained distance, and this is the power of absence. Words, arguments, even tears rarely reach an avoidant in the same way. What triggers self-awareness, what makes them see the truth of the connection, is your quiet exit, your unwavering boundary, your decision to stop chasing. They may never admit it, may never confess it, but their subtle, tentative return reveals more than any conversation ever could. You've shown them your worth not by clinging, but by standing still and letting them realize what they lost. So next time you feel invisible to an avoidant, remember this: your quiet exit might speak louder than any argument ever could. Your detachment isn't abandonment, it's clarity. And in that clarity, they finally see you in a way they never could, while you were always reaching. Avoidance. Don't explode in drama. That's one of the things that makes them so hard to read. They rarely react with obvious anger, tears, or confrontation. Their emotions are internalized, carefully managed, and often hidden behind layers of distance. So when you finally step back and emotionally detach, their reaction isn't immediate or loud. It's quiet, subtle, and deeply internal. This is the moment of the quiet realization, the point where they truly comprehend that you're gone, that you've stopped chasing, that the energy they once relied on is no longer there. It's a moment that often takes them by surprise, because for so long they've been protected by the walls they built, the walls that kept them safe from vulnerability, from closeness, from the intensity of genuine connection. In that silence, the avoidance mind begins to race. Though outwardly nothing changes, their first thought often resembles something like, wait, they actually left me. It's not the loud epiphany or an emotional outburst. It's a quiet, almost imperceptible crack in their internal armor. The walls they spent years constructing to avoid feeling too much, to avoid being exposed, to maintain control over their relationships, start to shift. There's no panic, no frantic attempt to win you back just yet. Instead, there's a stillness, a pause where they finally allow themselves to consider the reality of your absence. This pause can feel deceptively calm, but it's electric beneath the surface. For the first time, they are forced to confront what your presence really meant, the stability you provided, the care they took for granted. During this quiet realization, Avoidants often feel a swirl of conflicting emotions. Shame, regret, longing, and even fear can bubble up, but they are rarely expressed outwardly. Their instinct is still to retreat, to protect themselves from feeling exposed. But internally, something is shifting. They begin to notice the patterns they once ignored, the ways they pushed you away, the moments they withheld affection, the times they failed to meet you halfway. This is the moment where self-awareness starts to creep in, almost imperceptibly, like a slow sunrise over a horizon they've hidden from themselves. What makes this moment so powerful is that it doesn't come from confrontation or argument. It comes from absence. You've stopped chasing, stopped pleading, and stopped filling the emotional gaps they expected you to cover. The avoidant, who has always relied on distance and avoidance as armor, suddenly realizes that armor isn't impenetrable. Your departure exposes truths they've long avoided, truths about their dependence on your presence, the comfort you provided, and the stability they failed to appreciate. This quiet realization is the beginning of change, even if it doesn't lead to immediate action. It's a subtle shift, a crack in the wall that has long shielded them from emotional intimacy. And while they may not admit it, may not even consciously understand it yet, this moment is pivotal. It's the first time they truly see what they lost, and the first time they are confronted with the consequences of their avoidant patterns. Once the quiet realization settles in, the avoidant begins what can only be described as subtle testing. This stage is rarely obvious at first glance, and if you don't know the signs, you might completely miss it. Avoidants don't rush in with apologies or declarations of feelings. They don't send long emotional messages or demand explanations. Instead, their testing is indirect, quiet, and calculated. You might notice small behaviors, a casual like on social media, a seemingly innocent comment on a post you made weeks ago, or a short, almost accidental message that brushes against connection. Each action is measured, careful, and revealing all at once. It's not about grand gestures, it's about gauging your availability, measuring your emotional distance, and seeing if the space you created is permanent or temporary. These are not confessions. They are not admissions of regret. They are experiments in proximity, ways for the avoidant to test the waters without fully exposing themselves. Because vulnerability is terrifying to them, they avoid it at all costs. Words can be dangerous. They can be too revealing, too binding, too vulnerable. Actions, however, give them control. They allow the avoidant to feel the boundaries you've set, to sense your detachment, and to explore the possibility of reconnection on their own terms. Every comment, every small interaction is a signal, a quiet probe to see if you still exist in their world without forcing them to confront the deeper emotions that come with admission. This subtle testing is often a tipping point, both for them and for you. For them, it's a way of acknowledging loss without fully admitting it. They start to see that your absence isn't just a pause, it's a vacuum. The things they took for granted, the consistency, the attention, the emotional presence become visible in their mind for the first time. For you, it's a confirmation that the space you created is working. The avoidant is reacting not to words or pressure, but to your quiet strength, your detachment, your decision to stop chasing. It's the most honest feedback you can get because it comes without drama or manipulation. What makes the stage so fascinating is that avoidants are testing, not confessing. They are exploring without committing. They want to feel the pull of your presence, to sense if the connection is still there without risking exposure. This behavior often seems mysterious or even frustrating to the outside observer, but it's rooted in fear and self-protection. Every small action is carefully calibrated, revealing more about their inner state than any conversation ever could. Ultimately, subtle testing is their way of feeling out reality. They are learning slowly and cautiously that your absence matters, that your boundaries have weight, and that their own feelings are stronger than they allow themselves to admit. And while it may take time for them to fully confront these emotions, this stage marks the beginning of movement. The moment when the avoidant starts to navigate the truth of what they've lost and what they want to regain. Even though avoidants are masters of keeping their emotions hidden, there comes a moment when the ripple of your absence hits them quietly, deeply, and unavoidably. They may not show it outwardly, may not call or text in desperation, may not make dramatic declarations of regret, but internally, the tide of emotion begins to stir. Loss, regret, and sometimes fear creep in like shadows they cannot easily dismiss. These are feelings they have long avoided acknowledging, tucked away behind walls of independence and self-protection. Yet when you step back, when you stop providing the constant attention and emotional availability they've come to rely on, the void you leave suddenly becomes visible, undeniable, and profoundly impactful. This is the moment they begin to see what they took for granted. The stability you offered, the consistent care, the patience, the reassurance that never felt conditional was always quietly there, and they rarely had to confront it. But now, without it, they experience the subtle shock of your absence. It's not loud or showy, but it resonates in ways that words cannot capture. The emotional ripple is like a slow moving wave. At first, almost imperceptible, then building with intensity as the reality sinks in. Your presence, once so ordinary in their daily life, suddenly appears as a foundation they can no longer lean on, and they start to recognize its true value. Avoidants are not accustomed to feeling emotions in this way. Their default mode is detachment, a carefully cultivated distance that allows them to operate without fully experiencing vulnerability. But when your attention, your availability, and your emotional presence are withdrawn, they are forced to face the consequences of their choices. The absence is a mirror reflecting not only what they lost, but also what they fail to appreciate. It's a quiet, uncomfortable confrontation with their own patterns, and it can trigger feelings of fear that they may have pushed away someone who genuinely cared for them, fear that they may not be able to regain what is gone, and fear that their avoidance has left a permanent mark on the connection. What makes this moment so powerful is that it is entirely involuntary. You haven't said anything dramatic, you haven't demanded attention, and you haven't manipulated their emotions. The ripple occurs because of the space you've created, the boundaries you've held, and the calm detachment you've maintained. Avoidance may continue to hide their feelings, may maintain their usual composed exterior, but inside, the impact is profound. The absence reveals truths they cannot ignore. The stability, the emotional presence, and the quiet consistency they relied on without fully valuing it. Ultimately, this emotional ripple is a pivotal moment in any interaction with an avoidant. It is the first time they truly feel the weight of loss, the first time they recognize the depth of what they pushed away, and the first time they are confronted with the emotional consequences of their avoidance. Though subtle, it marks the beginning of internal change, a quiet awakening that may eventually lead them to reconsider, reflect, and in some cases, reconnect with the very person whose absence has finally reached them. Once the emotional ripple of your absence settles, the avoidant may begin what can best be described as subtle attempts at reconnection. This stage is delicate, quiet, and often easy to miss if you're not paying attention. Avoidants rarely rush in with grand declarations, dramatic apologies, or emotional outpourings. Their fear of vulnerability is too strong, and their instinct is still to protect themselves from feeling exposed. Instead, their reconnection comes in minimal, seemingly casual gestures that carry far more meaning than they let on. A simple text, a short message, or even a comment on something important to you can be a test, a probe, and an indirect confession all at once. Every small action is carefully calculated, designed to measure whether the emotional distance you've created is permanent or temporary, whether you're truly gone or just giving them space. For example, you might receive a message like, "Hey, long time no talk," or notice a subtle comment on a social media post about something you care about. At first glance, these messages seem innocuous, almost incidental, but they carry a hidden weight. They are the avoidance way of dipping their toe back into the connection without fully risking their heart. It's a form of cautious approach, a way to gauge your reaction, to see if the space you've maintained is real, and to feel the pull of your presence without exposing their vulnerability. Every word, every gesture is measured. Nothing is accidental. These actions are their language, a code that communicates desire, regret, and curiosity without ever saying it outright. Subtle attempts at reconnection are rooted in avoidance patterns, yes, but they are also deeply human. The avoidant has realized, often too late, the value of what they once had. They feel the weight of loss, the void of your absence, and the quiet truth that they may have pushed away something irreplaceable, but fear still governs them. Vulnerability is scary. Commitment is risky. So instead of running headfirst into emotion, they test the waters, approach cautiously, and communicate indirectly. Their actions become the vessel for feelings they cannot articulate in words. They may not say, I miss you or I'm sorry, but their gestures speak volumes if you know how to read them. For those who understand avoidant behavior, these small attempts are profoundly revealing. They indicate recognition, internal reflection, and in many cases, a desire to reconnect without the chaos of direct confrontation. They are hesitant, careful, and strategic, all hallmarks of avoidant behavior, but underneath it lies a simple truth. They want back what they pushed away. These moments are delicate yet powerful. They represent the first tangible movement toward bridging the emotional gap, the first sign that the avoidant is willing to reconsider their patterns, if only in small, cautious increments. In essence, subtle attempts at reconnection are avoidant. Love in its most understated form. They don't shout, they whisper. They don't reveal, they test. And they don't demand, they hope. For those who recognize it, these gestures carry profound meaning, a quiet, understated signal that the avoidant has acknowledged their loss and is quietly, cautiously seeking to reclaim what they once let slip through their fingers. After subtle attempts at reconnection, the avoidant often retreats again, not out of disinterest, but to process everything internally. This is the stage of self-reflection and isolation, a quiet, private reckoning where they confront emotions they have long avoided. Avoidants are wired to protect themselves from vulnerability, and even when they begin to feel the impact of your absence, they rarely externalize these feelings. Instead, they retreat into solitude, giving themselves space to think, analyze, and in many cases, regret. During this period, they ask themselves questions they have avoided for months or even years. What did I miss? Why did I push this person away? Could I have acted differently? These are not rhetorical questions. They are part of a silent internal dialogue that forces the avoidant to confront the reality of their choices. This reflection is rarely shared, at least not in the way others might expect. Avoidants struggle to articulate vulnerability, especially after having pushed someone away. Instead of verbal confessions, they turn inward, quietly examining the moments where they withdrew, where they closed themselves off, and where they failed to appreciate your presence. It's a process of self-exposure, but one that occurs entirely within their own mind. They sift through memories, noticing patterns they ignored before, the times you were patient, the stability you provided, and the consistent effort they took for granted. They begin to see, often for the first time, the real value of what they almost lost. What makes this stage so important is the subtle acknowledgement of your worth. Even if they don't reach out immediately, even if they maintain their distant exterior, internally they are admitting something powerful. You mattered more than they realized, and your absence has created a void that is impossible to ignore. It's a moment of clarity that comes not from confrontation, not from drama, but from introspection. They are forced to reconcile the person they are with the consequences of their avoidant behaviors. For some, it's uncomfortable. For others, it's enlightening. But for all avoidants who truly feel your absence, it is transformative. This stage also reveals the complexity of avoidant attachment. They are capable of deep emotional awareness, but only when it's safe, when they are alone, when they can process without pressure, and when they can protect themselves from the vulnerability that comes with open expression. They reflect, analyze, and gradually understand not just what they lost, but also why they lost it. They begin to recognize the impact of their patterns and the depth of the connection they pushed away. Ultimately, self-reflection and isolation is the turning point that leads to emotional growth. It's the quiet awakening that precedes action. While it may not immediately manifest in words or gestures, it lays the foundation for any future attempts at reconnection. The avoidant, in their solitude, silently honors your worth, and this internal acknowledgement is often the first step toward realizing the depth of the bond they nearly lost. It's a powerful reminder that avoidants feel more than they show, and their internal pursuing is a hidden yet profound testament to your significance in their life. There comes a moment that catches you completely off guard. The shock factor for you, you've emotionally detached, decided to step back, and perhaps even given up hope, believing that the avoidant has moved on or simply doesn't care. You brace yourself for absence, for indifference, maybe even for closure on your own terms. And then unexpectedly, they begin to emerge, not in grand gestures, not in dramatic confessions, but in small, deliberate ways that reveal a slow, subtle breaking down of the walls they built so meticulously. This is the shock factor. The realization that despite all their distance, their detachment, and their patterns of avoidance, they are reaching toward you cautiously, quietly, and in a way that speaks volumes if you know how to read it. Their approach is never loud. Avoidants rarely explode with emotion, and they seldom reveal vulnerability in a way that feels conventional. There's no sudden outpouring of apologies, no dramatic run back into your arms, no declarations of "I've realized my mistakes." Instead, their reconnection is nuanced. A comment here, a message there, a small gesture of presence in a space you occupy, all of these subtle actions carry emotional weight. To the untrained eye, it may seem casual, even insignificant, but to someone who understands avoidant behavior, it is profound. These gestures are the avoidance way of saying, "I see you, I feel the absence. I recognize what I nearly lost." What makes this moment so shocking is the contrast between expectation and reality. You've given up, mentally and emotionally prepared yourself for distance or even permanent separation. You've learned to hold your boundaries, to step back, and to prioritize your own peace. And yet, here they are quietly attempting to re enter your life, not forcefully, not recklessly, but deliberately with careful steps that reveal internal acknowledgement of your worth. This is a testament to the power of absence in avoidant dynamics. They rarely respond to pressure, but they react profoundly to detachment. Your quiet withdrawal becomes the mirror in which they see themselves and the connection they underestimated. The shock factor is also deeply emotional. You might feel a mixture of surprise, validation, and even a sense of irony. After all the effort, patience, and emotional labor you've invested, their walls begin to crumble only when you stop giving them access to your attention. It's a paradox that is quintessentially avoidant. They resist closeness until it feels unavailable, and only then do they recognize its value. This moment forces a reckoning for both sides. You see their vulnerability, albeit subtle, and they confront the consequences of their avoidance. Ultimately, this stage is a turning point. While it may not immediately lead to full reconnection, it is the first tangible evidence that the avoidant has processed your absence and is beginning to navigate their own emotions. It is profound because it requires insight to interpret, patience to observe, and emotional maturity to respond. And for you, it's a moment of clarity, a recognition that your boundaries, your withdrawal, and your quiet strength have impacted them in a way words never could. Here's the most important insight to understand when it comes to avoidance: they never truly change because of words. Conversations, arguments, or even heartfelt confessions rarely penetrate the walls they've built around themselves. Avoidants are wired to protect their emotional space, to guard against vulnerability, and to maintain distance when they feel threatened by closeness. Telling them how you feel, pointing out their patterns, or even pleading for them to recognize their impact often falls on deaf ears. Real change, the kind that is lasting and meaningful, doesn't come from external pressure or rational explanation. It comes from absence. It comes from creating space and allowing them to confront the consequences of their own action. Your withdrawal is the mirror in which they finally see themselves and the connection they risked losing. Your calm, consistent boundary is what triggers this self-awareness. By stepping back and not chasing, not arguing, and not negotiating their attention, you send a powerful nonverbal message: I am here, but I will not compromise my worth for your avoidance. Avoidance may resist noticing it at first, but over time, the absence of your constant availability begins to penetrate their consciousness. It forces them to face questions they may have been avoiding. Did I take them for granted? Did I push away someone who truly cared? What have I lost by not showing up? This is the beginning of authentic self-reflection, a process that is deeply uncomfortable but ultimately transformative for someone with avoidant tendencies. Stepping back is, in many ways, the most powerful move you can make. When dealing with an avoidant, it demonstrates self-respect, emotional maturity, and the strength to maintain boundaries without resorting to manipulation, confrontation, or ultimatums. Avoidants respond not to demands or arguments. They respond to the reality of loss, to the tangible absence of something they once relied on without fully appreciating. Your calm, steady boundary becomes a catalyst for change because it highlights their dependence on your presence, the stability you provided, and the care they overlook. Absence in this context is not a punishment. It's a tool for awakening, for creating insight, and for fostering a realization that words alone cannot achieve. This psychological insight also explains why many relationships with avoidance follow a predictable pattern. They may resist closeness, retreat under pressure, or push you away repeatedly. But the moment you detach and stop giving them automatic access to your attention, they are forced to reckon with the value of what they lost. Change is slow, subtle, and often indirect, but it is real. Your boundaries, your patience, and your ability to step back without drama become the triggers that shift their awareness from avoidance to reflection. Ultimately, the takeaway is clear. With avoidance, absence teaches lessons, words cannot. Stepping back is not about punishment, it's about creating the conditions for self awareness. Your calm, consistent presence from a distance shows them your worth in the most undeniable way. It's the quiet, powerful strategy that can finally make an avoidant notice, reflect, and potentially change. Not because they are told to, but because they feel it for themselves. So let's bring this full circle. You've watched, waited, and perhaps even felt invisible to the avoidant in your life. You've poured your energy into connection, tried to communicate your feelings, and even accommodated their distance. And yet, it often feels like nothing reaches them. But here's the subtle, almost paradoxical truth. Your quiet exit, your decision to step back, your choice to protect your own emotional space, these actions speak louder than any argument, any explanation, or any declaration ever could. Avoidants are not wired to respond to words alone. They respond to reality, to absence, to the undeniable proof that what they took for granted is no longer theirs to claim. Your calm detachment becomes a mirror, reflecting not only your worth, but also the consequences of their patterns of avoidance. When you stop chasing, stop pleading, and stop trying to fill the gaps they've created, the avoidant begins to feel the weight of your absence in ways they cannot articulate. They may test the waters with subtle gestures, small messages, or quiet attention, but these actions are not casual. They are deeply meaningful. They are the avoidance way of confronting their own choices, their own regrets, and their own fears of loss. And this is precisely why your quiet exit has such power. It forces them to reckon with what they've ignored for so long without forcing you to compromise your own boundaries. Your absence is not punishment. It is a revelation. This is also a lesson in self-respect and emotional intelligence. Many people feel guilt, doubt, or fear when they consider stepping back from an avoidant relationship. They worry about being too cold, too distant, or too harsh. But stepping away when you have given your all is not cruelty. It is clarity. It is the act of honoring your own needs while creating space for the avoidant to face the truth they have long avoided. The quietness of your exit, the steadiness of your boundaries, and the absence of dramatics amplify the impact far more than confrontation ever could. Avoidance may never explicitly say it, but internally they feel it. They recognize what they lost, sometimes too late, but always profoundly. So next time you feel invisible to an avoidant, remember this. Your quiet exit might speak louder than any argument ever could. The absence you create is a reflection of your self-worth, your boundaries, and your emotional intelligence. It is the subtle, powerful signal that communicates far more than words ever could. It teaches them about your value, about the stability they ignored, and about the love they risked losing. Your silence is not emptiness. It is a statement, a lesson, and sometimes the only language an avoidant truly understands. This is the ultimate insight into avoidant dynamics, actions, boundaries, and absence. Carry the weight that words cannot. And by stepping back thoughtfully and deliberately, you do more than protect yourself. You trigger awareness in the avoidant, inspire reflection, and quietly reclaim your power in a way that nothing else can. In the world of avoidant relationships, your quiet exit is more than a choice. It is a message, a mirror, and a profound demonstration of your worth.